Once upon a time there was a beautiful princess named Sophia who lived in a grand castle. She had everything her heart desired, except for one thing: true love. Sophia dreamed of the day her prince would come and sweep her off her feet. Little did Sophia know, there was a friendly dragon named Scales living in the nearby mountains. Scales was misunderstood by the kingdom because of his dangerous fire breath, but he was actually quite kind. He loved to read books in his cave and take flights over the countryside. One day, Scales was soaring over the forest when he spotted Sophia picking flowers. It was love at first sight for the gentle dragon. Scales knew he had to meet the lovely princess, but how? Every time a dragon approached the castle, the guards would sound the alarm and try to attack. Scales came up with a clever idea. He would disguise himself as a knight in shining armor. Late at night, Scales snuck into the royal stables and borrowed a horse and suit of armor. In the morning, he rode up to the castle gates and introduced himself as Sir Scales. Princess Sophia was instantly charmed by the gallant knight. She invited him to have tea in the castle gardens. They laughed and talked for hours. Finally, Scales worked up the courage to ask Sophia to go on a picnic with him the next day. The princess happily accepted. On the day of the picnic, Scales could barely contain his excitement. He packed up delicious treats fit for a princess and set up a picnic blanket in a tranquil meadow. When Sophia arrived, she gasped in delight at the scenic spot. The two friends spent the afternoon chatting merrily and dining on tea sandwiches. As the sun began to set, Sophia sighed contentedly. She had never felt this way about anyone before. Just as Scales was working up the nerve to reveal his true identity as a dragon, the ground began to shake violently. The evil dragon Brutus had caught wind of the romance and wanted to destroy Scales. Giant boulders came crashing down around Sophia and Scales as Brutus roared furiously up above. Scales knew he had to protect his dear Sophia. As Brutus dove toward the princess, Scales leapt in front and gave a mighty blast of fire breath. The evil dragon reeled back, grumbling in defeat. But the battle wasn't over yet. Brutus came back for another pass, spewing flames. Scales flapped his mighty wings, shielding Sophia from the fire. He used his tail to knock Brutus away. With a final massive fireball, Scales sent Brutus running. After the intense battle, Scales turned back to Sophia. She looked at him in amazement. "You're the dragon from the mountains," she exclaimed. Scales nodded nervously, afraid she would be angry at his deception. But Sophia threw her arms around the dragon in a hug. "You saved my life," she said joyfully. Scales explained how he had to disguise himself to meet her. The princess wasn't upset at all. She saw now what a kind and brave dragon Scales was. From that day on, Princess Sophia and Scales the dragon spent all their time together. Scales moved into a crystal cave on the castle grounds, where the villagers could see he was not a threat. On Sophia's 18th birthday, Scales asked her to marry him. The king and queen gave their blessing, for they could see true love between a princess and a dragon. Sophia and Scales were married in a beautiful sunset ceremony. The whole kingdom celebrated the unconventional union, and they lived happily ever after, showing that true love really can conquer all, even between a princess and a fire-breathing dragon. The end.